I love disruption. I can't get enough of it. I don't know what it is, but it's almost the naughty boy in me that goes, I mustn't disrupt, I mustn't disrupt. And we all don't like to be told what to do, so I do it more, and I like being told what. And you're probably thinking, hang on, it's a bit maybe posh to be a disruptor. But it depends what you mean by disruption. You see, if you're trying to catch a train home and all your trains are cancelled, that's bad disruption. But there's a positive side. And the positive side is, what about changing the status quo? Changing a direction? And so, down the pub one day, Mark Koska, who was an incredible man, an incredible disruptor himself, got me relatively drunk. He said, well, will you tell your story? And Barbara, I don't do telling my story. I do telling apprenticeships and skills. So this is the first time ever. World first. And so when thinking about my story, I was thinking, well, where did it start? And I realised it doesn't start with me. It starts with somebody else. It starts with my dad. Dad's in the audience, he's 92 years old. Because he's a disruptor. And I realised it runs in the family. Disruptions that run in the family. You're not taking what's given to you on the plate is necessarily the best thing. So let me start the story with him. That's him in the middle. 1948, so he came to this country as a refugee, and he started as a diamond polisher. And one of his stories, his defining story, was Queen Elizabeth, now the Queen, came to visit this factory where he worked. Conditions were pretty bad. On the day of the visit, everyone was given fresh new overalls. My dad, being non-conformist, being the disruptor, said, no, I don't want to give the impression that the conditions are great here. I'm going to keep my dirty overall on, as you see in the photograph. As a result, he was fired. And very shortly afterwards, he set up his own business, a gemstone business. And he had to sell gemstones of different sizes. And he worked out that if you take machines that cut glasses, lenses, and you apply that to gemstones, you can change the shape of those stones. And he created the first, and now the main stone cutting company, gemstone company, in the country. He is a disruptor. So I'd like to think that apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So here's my story. So as Mark says, I was a lawyer. I was never going to be very good, to be honest with you. Pretty average. And I couldn't conform. I just couldn't do it. So I left and I joined the business, the family gemstone business. Holts. Gemstone business, and it has master craftsmen. And I joined, having been in law, and I realised that, you know what, there's some great people in this business. People who are fantastic designers, fantastic goldsmiths, amazing people, but where's the continuity? If I'm a young man, where is, in 20, 30 years' time, what is the future of this business? And I had an idea. I said, well, you know, well, if we can't find people to replace those craftsmen, people like Roger Duncan, people who are just fantastic at art, who's going to share those skills to the next generation? So I thought, well, let's start teaching them. If we can't find them, let's teach them for the next generation. And we started teaching people, take the best ones, and they can work for us. And then I heard, hang on, we're not the only ones in this position. Other jewellers are also in the same position. So we started teaching for other companies. And before long, we set up an academy, which is today the only place, if you want to be an apprentice in jewellery in this country, it's the only place that delivers it. We created apprenticeships for the jewellery sector. This year we'll do 500 apprentices. There's 500 souls, but probably young people who are dying to be a jeweller that wouldn't have been able to have the opportunity to work in the most fantastic businesses up and down this country. And I thought, oh, there's something here. So, best next to my story is I set up a digital creative agency called Volition. We thought, well, how about if you design jewellery, what about wearing it virtually? So we set up, with augmented reality, a way in which you can virtually wear jewellery that isn't on you. It's a great company. But the point is that we couldn't grow either. There's no longevity. When you can't find the skills in the market, how can you grow? Big problem, big paradox. So, a great guy called Anthony Impey also has a tech business, also can't grow, also can't find the skills. Paradox, hang on a second. There are all these companies looking for skills. By 2020, 300,000 technology businesses will have unfilled vacancies. And yet, in Tech City London, there's 25% unemployment. And businesses say the reason they can't go, 75% say they can't go because they can't find the right talent. What's going on there? A real paradox. So Anthony Impey and I set up TechUp Nation, a way in which we marry what businesses want with the skills they need by teaching youngsters. Possibly unemployed, possibly not. And I've got to tell you, this is a 10-year journey. It's exhausting. It's really exhausting being a disruptor, let me tell you, particularly when you're working with government and working with red tape. You're going into government and trying to get people to realise what is the paradox of trying to grow your business and you can't find the skill. It really takes it out of you. Pretty much a nervous breakdown. And the irony is that just at the point at which I was going to go, I've had enough of this, I'm going to go back to running my business, I got a phone call. I got a phone call from Vince Cable. You might remember Vince Cable. And Vince Cable said, look, we've got a problem. We need you to disrupt us. Really? What, government? I said, yes. The problem is that we want to grow apprenticeships. And we want particularly to grow in small businesses, because small businesses are 99% of this country. And only less than 10% actually employ one. If you can try and think of ways in which we can grow those apprentices, wow, that would be great. So I did a government review. Me, little jeweller, did a government review on how to engage more small and medium-sized enterprises in taking on more apprentices. And this was a 49-page document, and I gave it my all. We had to give it a name. What are we going to call this report? And you get these people who, a lot of academics who disrupt, because they're brilliant. And it's given a very long name. Quite often these things aren't read. And my seminal moment was, we're going to call it the Holt Review. Now that's not a vanity thing. But what it did is it gave me, I suppose, a profile in government where it actually listened to me. They actually thought I knew what I was talking about. They believed in me. And from that moment onwards, it's 2012, until now, I've had all sorts of government appointments. Government Apprenticeship Ambassador this, Chair of the Trailblazer, and most recently, Chair of the Government Apprenticeship Stakeholder Board. Now that means nothing to most people, but what it does is it says, we will influence and guide you, government, to disrupt the way we're thinking, to make sure apprenticeships work for this country. And why is that important? Well, it's important for two reasons. One, there are more graduates in non-graduate jobs in this country than any other country in the developed world. And yet, employers are saying they can't find the skills. What paradox is that? And apprenticeships is the solution to that. And you would have heard David Cameron in the election talk about 3 million apprentices in 5 years. But what I do know is it works. If you look at Switzerland, you look at Germany, they've got the lowest youth unemployment and the highest productivity in the world, almost. That's what we could become. And how exciting for the little jeweller to influence that direction, to disrupt that thinking, to make sure that in 2020 and beyond, we will become a country, and I believe this, and I stand on the stage and I said that it will be normal as a youngster to go, you know what, I might not go to university, and it's equally viable to go to do an apprenticeship. And for a business owner to go, you know what, I need to grow, I'm going to take on an apprentice, and that's going to be normal. But again, it's just me, just on my own, just a small little company, and I didn't need to do it. Anthony Impey, he's got a small business. He didn't need to do it. There was no need to do it. And running 5 businesses and having 3 kids and having a wonderful wife, I didn't have something. So it couldn't have been a worse recipe to disrupt. So I think most of you in this room probably have an itch, which is possibly why you're here. You probably aren't necessarily that happy with the status quo, and you might want to make a difference. And so, having had an exhausting journey, let me tell you, I think, well, how can I sum up what I've learned to maybe make it easier for you, and maybe save a bit of time. And so, I think there are three things about how was I in a position to disrupt. Number one, use your gut. So that's the best image I can find. Because if thinking about what I was going to say today, I was thinking, what was it that led me to this point? And I realised that when I decided to leave law and go into the family jewellery business, I did so on the basis that I wanted to make a living, but I also wanted to make a difference. And I know that sounds really glib, but I wanted to have a social impact. I had no idea how that was going to manifest. But in every juncture, that's always stayed with me. And to do so, you have to stick your head above the parapet. You have to be prepared to be shot down. And believe me, it's not easy. Because a lot of people in the different sectors that I've worked have gone, why is he doing that? What's his agenda? Why does he want to change? And you've got to be prepared for that. But if you do it over and over years, you have a track record, people start believing you. The second thing, flexibility. You know, I sit in government and I can disrupt. They've asked me to do that. But only so much. You've got to know the balance. Disrupt, but not that much, please. You know. So you've got to know how far you can go. So listen to yourself. Know when to let go. Know when to hang on to things. Know when to compromise. But always listen to that heart, to that long-term goal. And the third, and I think the most important thing, something I've learned from Mark Koska, is about cultivating the people around you. It's all around the people. It's all about networking like crazy. But the interesting thing is, it's not the people you think that are going to make you able to disrupt. It's not the most important people. It's not the most senior people. It's the ones you least suspect. So, you know, you can have a great idea, but if the people aren't ready to hear it, as Mark Koska just talked about in terms of this 17-year journey, it won't happen. So, I haven't met wonderful people. I'm going to talk about three. So Adam Jackson is a middle-ranking official in government, and he came to visit me in the academy when I was just starting out, and I said, Adam, I don't understand it. Why is it that government supports graduates? I'm doing all this work about getting people jobs in the jewellery industry. Where's the support? Why is it so difficult for me to work through red tape and bureaucracy? Good question, Jason. Leave it with me. Didn't hear anything from him. Nothing. 2 years later, Vince Cable gives me a call. It turns out that Adam Jackson was talking to Vince Cable, said, if you want a review on small business and apprenticeship, talk to Jason Holt. He remembered. Who would have thought? Jane Bolton. She was somebody I worked with around apprenticeships when I did my review. She is to apprenticeships what Richard Branson is to entrepreneurship. There is nothing she doesn't know. She's now the managing director of Holts Academy. You just never know. I couldn't be sat on the stage right now, stood on the stage, if she wasn't there running the business in such an amazing way. And the third is Anthony Impey, who I told you. I met him as one of the hundreds of businesses that I spoke to when I did the review to find out what were the issues. And but for him, we wouldn't have possibly changed the tech sector in this country. It's all about trust. Now, crucially for me, it's great being a disruptor, but boy does it leave mayhem behind you. There's me kidding out, going, yeah, let's disrupt, but it takes 100% focus to change things. And you very quickly forget there's a whole bunch of people out behind you where there's chaos. So my advice is marry well, and I have married well. I'm a very tolerant wife, because when I go into my disruption mode, pretty much nothing matters. I become myopic. I'm a complete nightmare to live with. So in closing, you know, I go back to my father. I was very lucky to have the most incredible role model. And he taught me that you can make a difference. He taught me not necessarily to accept what's just given to you. And so my thoughts are to you, if you have an itch, could you think of somebody that really drives you, motivates you, inspires you to maybe make a difference? And if you do, put that person in your mind and start something. And you never know, it might just start taking a life of its own.